The 70s gave us some of the most unforgettable voices and talents in music history. But not every legend stuck around for the long haul. Some walked away at the height of their powers, leaving fans wondering what might have been. Today, we're counting down 12 music legends from the 70s that retired too soon. Number 12. Cat Stevens. When Cat Stevens announced his retirement from music in 1978, the world lost one of the most distinctive voices of the decade. He was only 30 years old, right in his creative prime, with hit after hit defining the softer side of 70s rock. Stevens had given us Tea for the Tillerman and Teaser and the Firecat, albums that became the soundtrack for a generation searching for meaning. His songs had this gentle wisdom about them, this way of speaking to something deeper in people. He wasn't flashy or loud, just honest and thoughtful, and that resonated with millions. But in 1976, Stevens had a near-drowning experience off the coast of Malibu. He called out to God for help, promising to dedicate his life to service if he survived. The waves brought him safely to shore, and he kept that promise. He converted to Islam in December 1977, took the name Yusuf Islam, and walked away from his entire career. The farewell came quickly. His last album under the Cat Stevens name dropped in 1978, and then silence. For fans who'd grown up with his music, it felt like losing a friend. Here was someone who'd soundtracked their college years, their first loves, their moments of doubt and discovery, and suddenly he was gone.
You know, I've seen a lot of what the world can do, and it's breaking my...
Stevens sold his guitars and gave up performing entirely. He devoted himself to education and charity work, building schools and helping communities. It was admirable, meaningful work, but the music world felt his absence deeply. What made it harder was knowing he still had so much to give. At 30, most artists are just hitting their stride, finding their mature voice. Stevens had shown such growth from album to album, and fans couldn't help but wonder what the next decade might have brought. He wouldn't return to recording until the early 2000s, nearly a quarter century later. By then, the musical landscape had changed completely. The gentle folk rock of the 70s was a distant memory, replaced by different sounds and different sensibilities.
Oh, baby, it's a wild world.
Number 11. Jim Croce.
I got a name. I got a name.
Jim Croce's retirement wasn't a choice. It was taken from him on September 20th, 1973, when his chartered plane crashed in Louisiana. He was 30 years old and just starting to see the success he'd worked so hard to achieve. Croce had spent years playing small clubs and coffee houses, struggling to make ends meet. He and his wife Ingrid drove from gig to gig in a beat-up truck, sleeping in the vehicle some nights to save money. They lived on hope and determination, believing that eventually the music would connect. That breakthrough finally came in 1972. You Don't Mess Around with Jim became a hit, followed by Bad, Bad Leroy Brown in 1973, which shot to number 1. Suddenly, the guy who'd been playing for tips was topping the charts. His storytelling style, mixing humor with genuine emotion, struck a chord with audiences tired of pretension. What made Croce special was his authenticity. He wrote about real people in real situations, the kind of characters you'd meet in any small town. His songs had details that made them come alive, little moments that felt true because they were true. He drew from his own experiences, the hard times and the good times, and never tried to be anything he wasn't.
I got a song. I got a song.
By late 1973, Croce was touring constantly, riding the wave of his newfound success. He'd just finished a show at Northwestern State University when he boarded that plane. The Beechcraft aircraft crashed shortly after takeoff, killing everyone on board. The cruel irony was that Croce had been planning to step back from touring. He'd told Ingrid he wanted to spend more time at home, maybe take some acting classes, explore other creative directions. Success had come, but it had also worn him down. He missed his family, missed having a normal life.
To take it well, I only wish my words could just convince.
His album I Got a Name was released just days after his death, with Time in a Bottle becoming a massive hit posthumously. Fans bought the records in droves, not just out of grief, but because the music was genuinely good. Croce had been developing as a songwriter, finding new depths in his work. What the world lost in that crash was immeasurable. Here was someone who'd finally found his audience, who was growing more confident and skilled with each album. The stories he might have told, the songs he might have written, disappeared in an instant.
Isn't there the way they say it goes?
Number 10. Peter Green. Peter Green founded Fleetwood Mac in 1967, and for those first few years, he was the driving force behind one of the best blues rock bands in the world. His guitar playing had this pure, emotional quality that guitarists still try to emulate. Eric Clapton once called him the only player who ever made him lose sleep worrying about his own skills. Green wrote Albatross and Black Magic Woman, songs that would outlive his time in the band. He had a gift for melody, for creating guitar lines that stuck in your head long after the music stopped. But he also had demons that nobody fully understood at the time.
Got a black magic woman.
In 1970, Green took LSD at a party in Munich. Something went wrong. Whether the drug triggered an underlying condition or just pushed him too far, nobody knows for certain. But he came back different, paranoid, disconnected, struggling with thoughts that frightened him. He started showing up to gigs acting strangely, suggesting the band give all their money away. During one recording session, he grew fixated on the idea that the music industry was evil, that success was corrupting them all. His bandmates watched helplessly as someone they loved slipped away from reality.
I might not give the answer that you want me to.
By May 1970, Green left Fleetwood Mac. He was only 23 years old at an age when most musicians are just beginning to find themselves. He tried forming other groups, but the magic was gone. The music that had once flowed so naturally became a struggle. The 70s were rough for Green. He spent time in psychiatric hospitals, diagnosed with schizophrenia. He underwent electroshock therapy. There were periods where he couldn't play guitar at all, where even holding the instrument caused him distress. The same fingers that had coaxed such beautiful sounds now felt alien to him.
Nobody saw me crying.
Fleetwood Mac went on to massive commercial success in the mid-70s. But it was a completely different band by then. Green's blues-based vision had been replaced with pop-rock polish. His former bandmates achieved everything he'd walked away from, but at least they'd kept their sanity. Green would eventually return to music in later decades. But those crucial years of the early 70s, when he should have been at his peak, were lost. The what-ifs surrounding Peter Green's career are particularly painful because his talent was so obvious, so rare.
Got a black magic woman.
Number 9. Terry Kath. Terry Kath was the lead guitarist and one of the founding members of Chicago, and if you ask musicians who played in the 70s, many will tell you he was criminally underrated. Jimi Hendrix once called Kath a better guitarist than himself, which says everything about the respect he commanded. Chicago started as Chicago Transit Authority in 1967, blending rock with jazz and R&B in ways nobody else was attempting. Kath's guitar work anchored their sound, giving it an edge that prevented the horns from making everything too smooth. He could play with incredible technical skill, but he always served the song. Beyond guitar, Kath had a powerful voice that handled both gentle ballads and hard-rocking numbers. He sang lead on some of Chicago's most memorable tracks, bringing genuine soul to the performance. The band was firing on all cylinders through the early 70s, churning out hit albums and selling out arenas. But on January 23, 1978, Kath accidentally shot himself while playing with guns at a roadie's house. He'd been drinking, showing off different firearms. Someone warned him to be careful, and his last words were reportedly that the gun wasn't loaded. It was. He was 31 years old. The loss devastated Chicago. Kath wasn't just a band member, he was their musical heart. His guitar playing and arranging had shaped their sound from the beginning. The group continued performing, but something fundamental was missing. What makes Kath's death particularly tragic is that Chicago was entering a new phase. The late 70s would bring them even bigger commercial success with a softer sound, but Kath never got to be part of that evolution. His final recordings show a musician still exploring, still finding new ways to challenge himself. Kath didn't retire in the traditional sense, but his death at such a young age cut short what should have been decades more of music. He never became a household name like some of his contemporaries, but those who knew his work understood what was lost. Number 8. Syd Barrett. Syd Barrett was the original creative force behind Pink Floyd, the guy who gave them their name and their early psychedelic vision. He wrote their first singles, including See Emily Play, which showed a gift for combining whimsy with genuine weirdness. Pink Floyd's early shows were unlike anything else happening in London during the late 60s. Barrett's guitar playing was experimental and unpredictable, matching the light shows and the mind-bending atmosphere. He was the face of the band, the one interviewers wanted to talk to. But LSD and mental health issues began pulling Barrett away from reality. By 1968, he'd become unreliable, sometimes standing on stage without playing, or playing the same note for an entire show. His behavior grew increasingly erratic. The band brought in David Gilmour to cover for him, then eventually asked Barrett to leave. Barrett attempted a solo career in 1970 with 2 albums, The Madcap Laughs and Barrett. Both had moments of brilliance, flashes of the talent that had started Pink Floyd, but they were also difficult listens, full of false starts and fragmentary ideas. You could hear someone struggling to maintain focus. After 1970, Barrett essentially withdrew from music entirely. He retreated to Cambridge, living with his mother, painting and gardening. Occasionally, rumors would surface about him working on new material, but nothing emerged. He'd gone from being at the forefront of progressive rock to living a quiet, private life. Pink Floyd went on to become one of the biggest bands in the world, with The Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall achieving massive success. They never forgot Barrett, though. They wrote Shine On You Crazy Diamond about him, a tribute to the friend they'd lost to his own mind. Barrett lived until 2006, decades as a recluse. Those who encountered him in Cambridge said he seemed content enough, far removed from the music industry that had chewed him up. But his retirement from music by his mid-20s represented one of rock's great what-ifs. Number 7. Gram Parsons. Gram Parsons spent most of the late 60s and early 70s trying to convince people that country and rock could merge into something special. He never lived to see country rock become a mainstream force, dying in 1973 at the age of 26 from a drug overdose. Parsons had played with the Byrds, helping create their groundbreaking country rock album, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, in 1968. Then he formed the Flying Burrito Brothers, continuing his mission to blend Nashville with Los Angeles. His songs combined traditional country structures with a rock and roll attitude. What made Parsons unique was his genuine love for country music's roots. This wasn't some hippie appropriation of country themes. He'd grown up in the South, understood the music deeply, and wanted to honor it while pushing it forward. His voice had a weary quality that made everything he sang sound lived in. By the early 70s, Parsons was working on solo material, finding his voice more clearly. His albums GP and Grievous Angel showed real growth, with Emmylou Harris providing harmonies that elevated everything. They were developing a musical partnership that promised great things. But Parsons struggled with substance abuse throughout his career. He'd been using heroin and other drugs heavily, and despite attempts to get clean, he couldn't break free. In September 1973, while staying at the Joshua Tree Inn in California, he overdosed on morphine and alcohol. The circumstances around his death and its aftermath were bizarre. His road manager stole his body from the airport and burned it in the desert, claiming he was fulfilling Parsons' wishes. Whether true or not, it added a strange coda to a life cut short. Parsons' influence wouldn't be fully recognized until years after his death. When the Eagles and others took country rock to enormous commercial heights, The sounds he'd pioneered became the template, but he never got to enjoy that validation. Number 6. Badfinger. Badfinger should have been one of the biggest bands of the 70s. They were signed to the Beatles' Apple Records, had Paul McCartney writing and producing for them, and crafted perfect power pop before anyone called it that. But a combination of bad management and tragic circumstances destroyed them. The band's early 70s output was phenomenal. Come and Get It, written by McCartney, hit the top 10 in 1970. Then they wrote Day After Day and Baby Blue, songs that showcased their own songwriting talents. Their music had melody, harmony, and hooks for days. But their manager, Stan Polly, was systematically stealing from them. The band members didn't know it at first. They were young guys who trusted the adults handling the business side. While their songs were earning money, very little actually reached them. By the mid-70s, the truth started coming out. Polly had diverted funds into accounts the band couldn't access. Legal battles ensued, freezing their assets and preventing them from working. Here were guys with hit records who couldn't afford to feed their families. Pete Ham, the band's primary songwriter and guitarist, fell into depression as the financial situation worsened. He'd poured everything into the music, only to watch it turn into a nightmare of lawsuits and debt. On April 24, 1975, Ham hanged himself in his garage. He was 27 years old. The band tried to continue, but the heart had gone out of it. Tom Evans, the bassist, would also take his own life in 1983, still depressed over the financial ruin and Ham's death. 2 talented musicians dead because of someone else's greed. Badfinger's retirement wasn't voluntary. It was forced on them by corruption and tragedy. Their music influenced everyone from Tom Petty to Elliott Smith. But the band members themselves never got to enjoy success or security. Number 5. Nick Drake. Nick Drake released 3 albums between 1969 and 1972, each one beautiful and each one largely ignored when it came out. His music was too quiet, too introspective for the times. People wanted volume and energy, and Drake offered whispered melancholy. His guitar playing was intricate, using alternate tunings to create textures that sounded like no one else. His voice was soft and vulnerable, drawing listeners into his private world. Songs like Northern Sky and Pink Moon created atmospheres of loneliness and longing.
If it tells me all you know.
But commercial failure weighed on Drake. His label, Island Records, tried to promote him. But radio wouldn't play his music. Tours went poorly because he was painfully shy on stage, barely able to speak to audiences. Each disappointment pushed him further into depression. By 1972, Drake had retreated to his parents' home in Warwickshire. He attempted to record more music, but the sessions were difficult. His mental health was deteriorating, and antidepressants weren't helping. He withdrew from friends and stopped performing entirely.
About the way this river flows.
Number 4. Phil Ochs.
Is there anybody here who thinks that following the orders takes?
Phil Ochs was one of the most important protest singers of the 60s, writing songs that challenged war, injustice, and complacency. He was often compared to Bob Dylan, though Ochs's politics were more direct and uncompromising. By the early 70s, though, the world he'd been singing about was changing. The Vietnam War was winding down, Nixon was president, and the counterculture movement had lost its momentum. Ochs struggled to find relevance in this new landscape. His 1970 album Greatest Hits was actually all new songs, a sardonic joke that confused fans and critics alike.
I heard many men a-lying, I saw many more dying.
Ochs began drinking heavily, falling into depression as his career stalled. He'd been bipolar for years, but the condition worsened as his sense of purpose faded. The causes he'd dedicated himself to seemed lost, and the audiences were moving on to different music. In 1975, Ochs traveled to Africa, where he was robbed and strangled. The attack damaged his vocal cords and left him traumatized. When he returned to America, he could barely sing. The voice that had rallied protesters and challenged power was reduced to a rasp.
Here is a land full of power and glory. Beauty that...
Unable to perform, dealing with mental illness, and feeling abandoned by the movement he'd championed, Ochs spiraled. He'd tell friends he was Phil Ochs's brother, that Phil was dead. In April 1976, he hanged himself at his sister's home. He was 35 years old. Ochs's retirement was forced by circumstance and illness, but it represented the end of an era. The protest folk movement he'd been part of was over, replaced by different styles and concerns. His death felt like the final punctuation mark on the 60s.
All her power shall rest on the strength of her freedom.
Number 3, Karen Carpenter.
They long to be close to you.
The Carpenters dominated the early 70s with their pristine harmonies and Karen's remarkable voice. Songs like Close to You and We've Only Just Begun were everywhere, showcasing her ability to convey emotion with perfect pitch and timing. But behind the squeaky clean image, Karen was struggling with anorexia nervosa. The disorder wasn't well understood in the 70s, and Karen didn't get the help she needed. She became obsessed with her weight, restricting her eating to dangerous levels.
On the day that you were born, the angels got together.
By the late 70s, the Carpenters' popularity was waning. Tastes had changed, and their soft pop sound seemed out of step with new wave and disco. Karen attempted a solo album in 1979, trying to show a different side of herself, but the label rejected it. The rejection devastated her. Combined with her eating disorder and a troubled marriage, Karen's health deteriorated rapidly. She weighed barely 80 pounds at one point, her body consuming itself.
Follow you all around.
In February 1983, Karen collapsed at her parents' home. Her heart, weakened by years of malnutrition, simply stopped. She was 32 years old, gone just as she was trying to get healthy again. Karen's retirement came through death, robbing the world of one of the purest voices in popular music. Her struggles with anorexia would later help bring awareness to eating disorders, but that was small consolation for the loss.
They long to be close to you.
Number 2, Dennis Wilson.
So beautiful.
Dennis Wilson was the only actual surfer in the Beach Boys, the one with real connection to the California lifestyle the band sang about. He was also a troubled soul who never quite fit the clean-cut image the group projected. By the 70s, Dennis was writing more for the band, contributing songs that showed real depth. Pacific Ocean Blue, his 1977 solo album, revealed a talented artist capable of serious work. Critics loved it, even if commercial success was limited. But Dennis was drinking heavily and using drugs. His personal life was chaotic, marked by failed relationships and financial troubles. He'd befriended Charles Manson in 1968, an association that haunted him afterward. The weight of everything was crushing him.
Can you see?
Dennis drowned on December 28, 1983, while diving near Marina del Rey. He'd been drinking and went into the water to retrieve items he'd thrown overboard years earlier. His body gave out in the cold water. He was 39 years old. His death effectively ended the classic Beach Boys lineup. The band continued, but without Dennis, something essential was missing. He'd been the wild heart of the group, the one who lived the lifestyle while others just sang about it.
Everything else.
Number 1, Sandy Denny. Sandy Denny had one of the most beautiful voices in British folk rock, a soprano that could convey both strength and fragility. She'd sung with Fairport Convention, helping create folk rock classics, then went solo with albums that showcased her songwriting abilities. Denny wrote Who Knows Where the Time Goes, a song that would be covered by countless artists. Her voice on her own recordings was stunning, capable of making you feel every emotion she poured into the lyrics. Robert Plant asked her to guest on Led Zeppelin's The Battle of Evermore, the only vocalist ever to appear on a Zeppelin album besides Plant himself. But Denny struggled with alcoholism and stage fright. The combination made touring difficult and recording sessions tense. By the late 70s, her health was failing, her voice showing the strain of hard living. In March 1978, Denny fell down a staircase at a friend's home. The injury seemed minor at first, but she'd suffered a brain hemorrhage. She went into a coma and died on April 21, 1978. She was 31 years old. Denny's death robbed British music of one of its most distinctive voices. She'd been developing as a songwriter, finding new confidence in her abilities. What she might have created in the decades that followed is impossible to know, but the 3 solo albums she left behind hint at endless possibilities. These 12 artists left us far too early, taking their talents and their potential with them. Some left by choice, some by tragedy, but all of them walked away during the decade that should have been their prime. Their music remains, though, reminding us of what was and what might have been. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, give us a like and subscribe for more music history. What other 70s legends do you think retired too soon? Let us know in the comments below.